Hi, this is Dr. Ramon Goings, and in this video, I provide 4 strategies that doctoral students can use when preparing for the dissertation defense. Tip number 1. As an expert, you must prepare for the dissertation defense. As you can imagine, you all have spent years focusing on your dissertation topics, and your proposal and final defense is the opportunity where you can showcase that expertise to your committee members and possibly family and friends. However, in order to prepare for the defense, you must think about all the aspects beforehand so that when you go to your defense, you're not shocked by anything that happens. So here are some things to consider. Have you thought about how long your dissertation defense is supposed to last? For instance, do you have 20 minutes to present? 30 minutes, 45, 60? Depending on your time frame, that can drastically alter your presentation. And so you want to know how much time you have to present before you go into the defense so that you're not shocked. Also, is your defense open to the public? So can family and friends attend, or is it just closed for your committee? Typically what I see at the proposal phase, a lot of times the proposal defense is closed with just you and your committee, but then your final defense, given this is a celebratory time, that is open to the public. So you need to consider those things when you're thinking about your defense. Also, do you prepare a PowerPoint presentation, or are you literally reading from your dissertation? You want to know this because that impacts how you're going to prepare for the defense. So again, since you are the expert, you must prepare and know all of these things in advance. In my book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation, a guide to navigating the dissertation process and finishing in record time, I provide 2 chapters in the book exclusively focused on the dissertation defense because it's such a critical component of the process, but I would say it's often least discussed. Tip number 2. As an expert, you must be prepared for questions about the literature and methodology of your dissertation. As you all can imagine, going into your dissertation events can be a very nerve-wracking experience. However, what I often find and coach my clients to be prepared for is to really know 2 critical components. One is the literature in your area, and the second is the methodology. And you should be prepared for questions about both because these are the anchors of your dissertation. Essentially, you're trying to make the case as to why your study is contributing to the knowledge base. And so one question that you should be prepared for, and I call it the alley-oop question, a committee member may ask, well, who are the authors that write on your dissertation topic? And then how do you see your work extending their conversation that they've already had in the literature? When you get this question, it should be a no-brainer. You should be able to spat off who are those authors in your area. Because again, these are like family members, and you should know at this point in the process who those people are, what the conversations they've already had, and then to position your dissertation as to how you're changing that conversation with your work. In addition to knowing the literature in your area, you must have a firm grasp of your methodology and be prepared for questions about your methodology. For instance, you might want to be prepared to unpack what is the history of your methodology and why are you using it in the particular way that you plan to use it in your dissertation. Another question that you may want to consider is, what is your rationale for using your methodology? It's not just good enough to say, I have a particular method that I want to use, but you want to give your committee the rationale as to why. And this goes for your proposal defense as well as your final defense, because again, you could be challenged on this particular methodology section at any point in your dissertation process. So you always want to be prepared and have your answers in particular about what is your rationale for your particular methodology. If you approach your literature and methodology in this way and prepare for these types of questions, you'll be more than prepared to handle the dissertation defense. Tip number 3. You are an expert on your data, so all questions during your dissertation defense must go back to your data. This particular tip goes for those doctoral students who are getting ready to defend their final dissertation. What I want you all to consider at this point is that you are the expert on your data. At this point in time, no one knows your data better than you do. So anytime you get a question from a committee member, you want to find ways to tie it back to the data. So for instance, if you get a question about the literature, someone may ask you, well, how is your literature building on these scholars, and then how have you changed the conversation? First, you want to address the first part of the question and talk about who those scholars are. You may say Scholar A, Scholar B, and Scholar C have done this type of work. My dissertation looked to do something vastly different, and based on my findings, I found X, Y, and Z. And now as you see, we started to address your committee members' question, but then we took it back to the data. Because again, no one can argue you on your data because you know it better than anyone else at this moment in time. So you always want to bring your questions back to the data because that is where you can showcase and shine your expertise. Tip number 4, you must prepare your family and friends for the dissertation defense. This goes for definitely the proposal and especially the final defense. As you can imagine, not only are you excited to be at this point in the process, but so is your family. For many of you, you may have sacrificed time with your family to dedicate this time to writing your dissertation. So this should be a celebratory moment for you in your life, and particularly your academic career. However, I want you all to consider preparing your family and friends for the defense. And I want to give you an example from my own dissertation defense as to why I always caution my clients and those I work with to prepare for the defense ahead of time. This is what happened to me. So during my dissertation defense, my final defense, a committee member asked a question that could have been seen as critiquing my work or really coming across as very authoritative. And what ended up happening is I had family members who turned around and kind of grilled that particular person during the defense. And it was because I didn't prepare them for that. And so what I want you all to consider and do is to actually have a conversation with your family and friends beforehand to let them know what will happen during the defense. So you should tell them that you will get questioned and that the questions at times may seem somewhat argumentative, but just tell them that you are the expert and that you will be able to handle their questions accordingly. And then with this, you also want to prepare your family and friends to not ask questions at your defense. I say this because it is already nerve-wracking enough that as a dissertation defender, you have your committee asking you questions and possibly other faculty members. But you do not want your family to ask questions at this point in time. Tell them and have this honest conversation, say, I love you and I appreciate you all for support. And the best way you can support me is to ensure that you do not ask questions at my defense and actually just hold those questions until we have our graduation party. You can ask me all the questions that you want. I found from my experiences that during dissertation defenses, when family members ask questions, sometimes they ask very good questions and sometimes can change the conversation about the dissertation topic. And so you want to minimize that as most as you can. So you want to prepare your family and friends to not ask questions at the dissertation defense. If you prepare your family and friends ahead of time, I am sure that you will experience success and you will have all the time in the world to celebrate with your family and friends and answer all those questions at your graduation celebration. Thank you for tuning in to the Done Dissertation Show with Dr. Ramon Goings. If you want to take steps to get closer to a done dissertation, please don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter.